In the last class, I think we have spoken about ch own, okay, changing ownerships, sudo versus su command, right? And then we have slightly introduced something called as uh, sudoers file, right? So this is what we have done in our last class. Now let us basically try to understand, okay, how do I change the password? Change your password. So this is where we would start our discussion, and then we would look at chmod also, right? So now changing my password. So for that I need a Linux machine. So let me log in into the machine which we have used yesterday. Okay, so our server is still not started. Yes, our server is started. Now let me log in into this machine. And if you remember, we had created 3 users yesterday. So I'm switching myself to a user called as John. And if you remember, I've given the password as John123. Now I don't like his password. I want to change his password, right? So the easiest way of doing it is PASSWD. Okay. And generally you can give the username. Okay. But if you don't give the username, it will take the current username. And we have already looked into who is the current user. To find it out, there are 2 ways. One is who am I? The other one is your bash will try to tell you who is your current user, right? So now PASSWD, and then I would try to give a new password. This time I'm giving John1234. Okay. Oh, I have to give the current password. Sorry, my bad. Okay. So John123, and then new password I'm giving it as John1234. John1234. Okay. So the password has been changed successfully. Right. The command for changing the password is right. Okay, PASSWD, and I'm writing this user in the square bracket. Square bracket means it is optional. Okay, right. So this is what we have done. Okay, I've switched myself as a John, and then I've changed the password of the John. Now let me save this image. Now let us try to find out if the other users can change the password of this John or Rick or whoever it is, right? So where is it? Yeah. Ah, what was that? I think I messed up. After 50, I've created 56. Man, that's bad. So let me create it as 51. Okay, right. Now let's log in as user John and change his password. This is what I've done. Okay. Images slash linux51.png. Right. Now let me try to change the Rick's password as John. Let me try to tell sudo PASSWD Rick. Okay, then it is asking password for John. I will try to enter my password for John. Then it is asking new password. Let me enter Rick1234. Rick1234. Okay. Now let me try to become Rick. Okay. Rick123. It is trying to tell that it has failed. Now let me enter the changed password. Remember yesterday we have understood this aspect where we have tried to say that whenever you use sudo command, right, sudo command helps you in becoming as a different user for that command. So to change this password, I have behaved as a root user. Right? So now we have tried to change this. Okay, a root user can change the password of any user. A root user can change the password of any user, right? Okay, let's log in as sudo user and change password of other user. Okay, I'm not doing for root. Okay, so root user can change password of any user. Root user can change the password of any user. Am I clear on this, sir? Okay, now let us look at one more command, which is chmod. Okay, so let us look at what the chmod command is all about. Okay, so change mode. Okay, so syntax of this command is, you can give chmod. Okay, if you want, you can give reference. Okay, and then you can give operator, and then you can give mode. Okay, reference, or you can give something called as operator, and then you can give mode to file, or many other things which follow this. So what is this whole jazz about? Let us try to look out for that. Okay, so what are the references? Reference is not new to us. We have already discussed about these references. Okay, but still let me quickly write down what are the references. Okay, so the references which we have is, the first reference which we have is u. What will u stand for? U stand for owner. G stands for group. Okay, and then O stands for others. If you want to give a permission to all, then you can give A, all. Okay, so now let me try to write what are the operators that are supported. Okay, so the first operator which you would have is plus. Okay, so plus will add the modes. Okay, and then the next operator which you would have is minus. Minus will remove the specific modes from file permission. Okay, so and then we have something called as equals to also over here. Equals to, what it does is, the modes specified are made exact. Okay, so whatever you specify in equals to, they are basically made as exact. Now let us try to deal with this stuff. Okay, so what I would try to do is, let me go ahead and as this Rick user, okay, let me log in as, okay, let me basically as a user John, let me create some files. So make dir, okay, mod test. Okay, I'm quite sure everyone understands this command. Yes or no? Yeah, so we have created 10 files with one command. -p is if directory is not available, create a directory. Okay, right. Now what I want to do is, I want to change the, okay, the way the commands are basically shown over here. Okay, so man, I have messed it up. Right, my bad. There is one thing which I messed it up. Okay, all of these files are created as directories. rm minus rf mod test. Okay, so that -p basically creates directories. So make dir mod test. Okay, and then touch mod test slash 1::9.txt. Okay, so ls-al mod test. Okay, am I clear on this? Now this is see, we stuff. Let me do this c mod. Oh, sorry, ch mod. Okay, u. Okay, plus x, u plus x mod test slash 1.txt. What does it mean? For the user, go and add execute permissions on the file 1.txt. Now if I do ls-al mod test slash 1.txt, are you seeing the differences? For the user, is the execute permissions added, which was not there above? Right, sir? X means execute. X means execute. Yeah, good. Now that is not it, right? We have done this earlier. Okay, now let me try to basically do this. Okay, so make dir okay -p, sorry, -p mod test, okay, colon a comma b comma c. Will it work? ls hyphen, okay, let me try to have a screenshot this far because it would be difficult. Okay, right, so let me try to save this. Okay, now let me show you some examples. The first example is 53, and in the next example what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create directories. So ls hyphen al, okay, mod test slash. So are you seeing 3 directories? Yes or no? Okay, so for the directory A, shall I give some extra permissions? Okay, so I will try to tell chmod, okay, group equals to rw, okay, and then mod test slash a. What does this mean? For the group, there are read, write, and execute permissions on the directory. Basically, give him only read, write permissions. Not, there is no need for execute permissions. Okay. Now let me use ls-al. ls-l is enough. A will add show all the files. Okay. Now mod test -a. So are the permissions changed? Oh, mod test slash. Okay, so are the permissions changed now? So if you see over here, you are not basically looking at the stuff. Basically over here also it has shown, but this is what it is. It would sound confusing. So let me try to project this. Okay, right. Oh man, oh, I have lost the screen, is it? I can't help it, sir. So let me do one thing. Okay, So let me create 3 more directories. So this is for the sake of screenshot. Make dir -p mod test. Okay, I can write these commands, right? Why do I need to create a screenshot? Okay, so make dir -p mod test /a comma b comma c, and then you do ls-al mod test /. Now you do chmod, okay, g equals to rw mod test /a, and then you do ls-al mod test /. Okay, and if you observe the file permissions, I'm quite sure it would be evident for you what chmod can do. What chmod can do. Yeah, yeah, right. So let me try to show you one more thing. Okay, so I have a very I will create one file. Okay, so even though it is empty file, that's okay. Mod test /secret.pem file. Okay, now if I basically look at ls-al mod test /secret.pem, are you seeing these rights? Okay, but generally your secret files are supposed to have, okay, 400 stuff. What is 400? What is 400? We have spoken about these permissions. What does 400 mean? Okay, only the owner has read permission, others have no kind of permission. Yes. Okay, so I'm giving chmod, I can give 400 mod test /secret.pem, and now if I execute the same command again, are you seeing this? So generally when we work with secret files, we would have this stuff to be done. I'm just writing this because you might end up using this in AWS, okay, or any key based login, we would end up doing this. Am I clear on this, sir, so far? Yeah, right. So one more thing which I want to basically speak about is, okay, what is this umask, and how to basically set up the umask in Linux. Okay, let us look into this. Okay, you might not use umask at all, but fine. Since I've started the discussion, I would want to do this. If you know chmod and all of that stuff, right, that's more than enough, right? So umask is basically from Unix itself. Okay, is also known as, or is known as, user mask. Okay, or it is also called as user file creation mask. Okay, so in this basically what happens is, all right, okay, typo in 37 line, user, I think, okay, right, okay, sir, right. So basically umask command, what it does is, this is a base permission, okay, or a default permission when a new file or folder is created in Linux. Okay, so am I clear on it? So generally it will determine what will be the default files permissions, what will be the default file permissions, right? So how can I basically look at this stuff? Okay, so let us try doing this. Okay, touch test file. Okay, and make dir test dir. Okay, so shall I do this? Touch test file. And okay, let me not do over here. Let me try to create make dir umask. Okay, cd umask, and over here touch test file and make dir test dir. Okay, and now let me look at permissions ls-l because you have not created any hidden files. So what are the default default file permissions which we are getting? So for the directory we get, okay, so read write execute, which is 7, read write execute, which is 7, read and execute, which is 5. So 775 is what we are basically getting, and for the file basically what we get is we get read plus write, which is 6664. Do you agree with that? Okay, so fine, let me try to write it down over here. Okay, so good. The default permissions, okay, for file are 644 and for directory are 7, 5 and 5. Is it correct? Or 775 or 775? Okay, good. Right. Now, by default, Linux is basically creating us this kind of permissions. Okay. So now, how do I deal with this? How do I basically try to understand, okay, or try to basically change this behavior? Is there any way of changing this behavior? Okay. So basically what happens is, right, in Linux what happens is umask is a value which tries to tell what are the permissions which you basically give to your file or folder. Okay, so what we can do is, okay, let me basically get into a file. Let's, okay, add following entry, okay, into a file. Don't ask me what this file is because we have not gone that far, but for now it's okay. You just get into this file at c/profile, some configuration file, okay, and add the entry, okay, umask 0027. Okay, so that is what I'm going to do. Okay, sudo etc profile. Okay, sudo vi etc profile, and in this, at the bottom of this, I am trying to add a line which basically says umask 0027. Okay, now I would execute a command which is source, okay, source etc profile. Okay, now let me create a new directory called as test again dir, and now let me look at ls-l. Are there any changes in permissions? Yes, sir. Yeah. So how is this happening? Okay, let us basically do this. Let me take a screenshot of this first, and then I would explain how this whole stuff works. Okay. Okay. Generally, you never do this until unless you have a very special need to do this. Okay. Right. Good. Okay. Now let me remove that entry from profile. Okay. Sudo vi // profile, and let me remove that line. Okay, because I don't want anything to be disturbed in this machine. Okay. Right. Good. Now let me try to tell you what it is. Okay. So now, what are the maximum permissions which we can get? 7, 7, 7. Do you agree with that? Yes, sir. Now, what is the mask value which I have written? 0, 2, 7. The first one was for directory. Leave it. Okay. Now, can you subtract this? 7 minus 0 will give you what? 7. 7 minus 2 will give you 5. 7 minus 7 will give you 0. What is 750? Read, write, execute, read and execute. Okay, and nothing. Do you agree with me on this? Yeah. Now let me paste it over here. Okay. So I think this means 6. Preview dot slash images slash linux 56 dot png. Now what is 750? Right. Now look at directory permissions which we got. Now observe directory permissions for the newly created directory. Okay. This is newly created directory, right? Is it matching, sir? 750. Okay. So now do we understand what a umask is? Okay. So very rarely we would use that. If you want to change the way your file permission modes by default apply on your system. Okay. So are we clear on umask now? Yeah. So if I give you the username and if I give you the group name and if I tell you the permission, will you be able to set it for already created files or for whatever files that are going to be created newly? Yes. Sounds like fun. Good. Right. Now let us get into our next aspect of Linux. Okay. Which is processes. Okay. So what is a process in an operating system? Right. So what does a process mean? Okay. So generally let us understand. Okay. A process is basically a program that is executing. Okay. So basically when you want to execute a program, executing the program, okay, happens, okay, in a sequential fashion. Okay. So when the program has to be executed, it requires certain system resources. It requires certain system resources. Okay. So basically, if you go into any operating system, you can consider process is the basic unit of work. Okay. So whenever we want anything to run in operating system, that would be a process. That would be a process. Okay. So now, for example, you double clicking this notepad, a process is launched. A process is launched. Okay. So whenever you want to run anything on an operating system, a process is created. Okay. So to run anything on OS, let it be Windows, Linux, Solaris, you take any operating system on this planet. Okay. A process has to be created. All right. So in the Windows, if you basically open Task Manager, okay, and if you get into details, generally every process will have a name and it will have a process ID. Okay, it will try to tell you what is the user that has basically started this process, and for the process to run, okay, we need some CPU and memory. So why we need that? Today you can attend the Python class. Today I'll be somehow discussing about this. All right, let us try to understand this. Okay, so now basically for any program to run, okay, the steps are, for any process to run, okay, the first thing what happens is a program is loaded into memory and it becomes process. So am I clear on this? It is loaded into memory and it becomes process. Okay, so and it will have 4 sections. Every process will have, okay, process has 4 sections or 4 data structures which are basically managed. Every process will have a stack. Every process will have heap. Every process will have some data and every process will have text. Okay. All right. And now, why do I use a stack? This is all operating system. In the graduation, if you have understood the operating system subject in your computer engineering, you would have understood this. Okay. So the stack contains, okay, temporary data. Okay. Such as, right, what method or function is basically executing, right? What are the parameters? What are return addresses? Okay, and local variables, right? So if you are running any application, that application have been written as a code by some developer, right? We might not need a code, okay? But to run anything, even if you want to run calculator is a code written by someone, okay? So now, basically, next stuff, okay? Heap. This is dynamically allocated memory. Memory to process. So generally, whenever your application requires some amount of data to be initialized, then it would be created in a heap. Okay. So then, right. So generally, this is too much deeper. But if you basically get into data, here you would have global and static variables of your program. Okay, it is not required for us to know all of this to work on Linux, but I'm just trying to, since the topic came, I'm speaking about it. Okay, so in the text generally we would have values like program counter, okay, process registers, etc. Okay, so whenever your program is basically running, we need this much of stuff. Okay, and this basic process, okay, is executed by your processor. Okay, and the memory required for that will be in the RAM. Okay, so your program might not have any advantage if it is not executed by your processor, right? So otherwise, what is the purpose of processor? Processor will execute the code, and then it will do the actual calculations, right? So generally, let it be any operating system for that. So every process will have some kind of a life cycle. Okay, I'm not going to write everything, I'm just going to write the step names. So it will have something called as start. This is the initial state. Okay, and then it would have a state like ready, then it would have running. Okay, probably you can pause the process, so it might be waiting, right? And then it might be terminated or exited, right? So everything in your operating system will run, okay, as a process. Okay, so am I clear on this? Okay, if you get into operating systems, we need to still understand process control block and process scheduling. Okay, I'm not getting into that. Okay, so any program which is basically running on your operating system, let it be Windows or let it be Linux, is a process, and every process will have certain amount of CPU and RAM allocated to it. Am I clear on this part? Okay, and every process which you are trying to run tomorrow, when you run Tomcat server, tomorrow when you run Kubernetes, tomorrow when you run Docker container, all of these things are processes for your operating system, and they consume some amount of CPU and they consume some amount of RAM. Okay, so generally when we work with operating systems, we would definitely need to work with multiple processes, right? So let us try to look into some of the commands. Okay, let's understand commands which you would be using, which we would examine with respect to process. The first command is ps. Okay, ps will report the snapshot of current processes. Okay, and then we would have something called as top will display tasks. Similarly, there is something called as jobs. It will list active jobs. Okay, I've not defined all of them, but let me write down the command so that even if because you'll not be able to do everything in the classroom today, you can try out the examples, right? So there is something called as bg, place the job in the background. Okay, and there is something called as fg. Fg is place the job in the foreground. Okay, there is something called as kill. Okay, send a signal to a process. Okay, kill all. Okay, so which is kill a process by name and then shut down. Okay, shutdown is, you can use this command to shut down or reboot a Linux system. Am I clear on this, sir? Okay, right. So today I'll be basically introducing two kinds of programs, right? Or I'll basically introduce something called as daemon programs, right? So let's try to understand what this daemon programs in Linux are. Okay, so when a Linux system starts, okay, so kernel has to run some of the activities, right? Yes or no? Linux kernel has to run some of the activities, has to run some activities. Okay, so it initiates those activities as processes. Okay, and what it does is after that, and then it launches. Okay, it launches a program called as init. A program called as init. So whenever a Linux system starts, kernel has to do some activities. To do that activities, what kernel will do is it will start its own activities and then it will launch a program called as init. And now what init will do is, right? Let me write it like this. Now init, okay, runs, okay, a series of shell scripts, okay, called as init scripts, called as init scripts, okay, which start all the system services. Okay, so many of these services, okay, are implemented as daemon programs. What is daemon program? Let us try to look into it. Okay, so daemon programs are programs that just run in the background, run in the background, and generally they don't have user interface, UI. Generally they don't have UI. Okay, so for example, from your system, if you do control P, okay, if you go into any document and if you try to do control P, okay, you would be able to send it to printer, right? Do you agree with me on this? Yeah. So Windows also has these kind of daemon programs, but Windows calls them as Windows services. Okay, so if you go into the services.msc, and there will be one daemon program or one Windows service which is called as print spooler. And now let me stop this. Okay, now let me do control P. Let us see what happens. So are you getting some error? Yes or no? Yeah. Why? Because in the background, the program that is responsible for taking these printouts is not running. And if it is not running, your print functionality will not work, right? So this is basically the program in the background. Similarly, in Linux also, we'll have lot of programs in the background. So for example, tomorrow, when you run Apache server, when you run your Tomcat server, when you run any of the application which you want to start automatically when your system is starting, okay? So we would create them as Linux services, right? And Linux services are generally called as daemons, generally called as daemons. Okay, so we have to understand the concept of parent process and child process. How do you view the processes and all of that stuff? And before that, I want to speak about exec and fork. Okay, so I would start my tomorrow's class with this exec and fork. Okay, I'll not do it today because it would be difficult for me to finish that topic. But there is something in Linux which is interesting, which is called as exec and fork in Linux. Okay, so this is interesting stuff. Okay, so what happens when we do fork and what happens when you do exec? Because whenever you want to start any new process in Linux, generally in the lower layer, this will be called. So we need to understand what is this fork and what is this exec. Okay, does it sound interesting, guys? Is Linux now at least becoming convenient for us, or is it still a pain? Yes, sir. So are we becoming at least comfortable day by day with Linux, or our life is still the same? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, what is the actual purpose of daemon? See, for example, uh, let us, Manasa, let me try to tell you an example. You want to run your web application. Okay, so your web application should be running all the time on the server, or should it be running only when the user tries to make a call? Generally, it should be running all the time, right? Because we don't know when the user will make a request. Yeah. So now how can you make the program run all the time? Make it a service or make it a daemon. Okay. So that whenever your Linux system is starting, along with that, our application also starts. Am I clear on this? Okay. So if you go to google.com, google.com will be running all the time. Okay. It will not basically do the stuff, right? Difference between jobs and tasks, that Ramya anyway will discuss in tomorrow's class, right? Yeah, Docker is also a daemon. Kubernetes is also a daemon. Anything which runs all the time is a daemon. Okay. Garbage collector is we will discuss about it, but garbage collector in Linux, it comes in with the programming language perspective, right? Yeah, but anything, so it can be any program. So if you want to run any program in Linux all the time, we call it as daemon. As simple as that. All right. So we'll be understanding different daemons, but anything that runs all the time is daemon. Am I clear on this, sir? Okay. And are you guys practicing it? What is the difference between background and foreground? So for example, the print spooler is background. Okay. Foreground is the task which you see evidently, right? Running, which you interact with, which you interact directly with. That is what is difference between background and foreground. Right? Generally with foreground tasks, you will interact. For example, it could be your Chrome browser. Right? In Linux, it would be your terminal command, whatever commands you would be seeing the outputs of that stuff and all of that. Virendra, am I clear on that? Yeah, but anyway, we'll discuss about this topic. This topic is not finished. It is yet to start. Okay. Siva, we have basically, whenever we speak about user creation, then I will definitely speak about it. I know that you still have some confusion between the users. Yesterday, we have just used user creation to demonstrate chmod, to demonstrate how we change passwords, right? Not really to understand the user privileges. Okay. So when we go into user configuration and management, I'll definitely speak about it. Okay. So right now, what I want you to understand is that file modes, right? Yeah. So in file modes, you have nothing to do with root and sudo. Yeah. Clear on that, sir? Okay, then I'll stop it at that.
Thanks for watching. For more videos, subscribe our channel and click on bell icon.